But when it comes to people who split their ticket, I think a lot of people cited several different things. One is there is universal frustration in this country, much of it I actually think justified, that is raging at a political establishment that centers corporate interests, billionaires, and puts their needs ahead of the needs of working Americans.
A political establishment that puts billionaires and corporations ahead of working class Americans. And that's a view led by Senator Bernie Sanders on the left and sadly by Donald Trump on the right, as crazy as that sounds. So in this case, in AOC's district where she amplified the populist message, a lot of voters split their ticket supporting AOC for Congress and Donald Trump for president. And that highlights just how crucial the populist anti-establishment message has become. Voters are increasingly drawn to candidates and campaigns that challenge the status quo. And by the way, if you need an example of an establishment insider who appears out of touch with voters and can't even directly answer a simple question, look no further than Democrat House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on CBS News.
Do you believe that Vice President Harris should have created more of a distinction between what she was going to do up against what the Biden administration is doing?
Well, we'll have an opportunity to engage in after-action analysis, and I expect that will happen not just over the next few days, but over the next few weeks and the next few months. It will be required. From our perspective as House Democrats, I think we're going to have a family conversation that needs to be clear-eyed, candid, and comprehensive to figure out what happened on election night, why did it happen, and how do we improve upon the performance in order to put us in the strongest possible position to deliver for the American people moving forward.
Translation: yes, we will try to find out why we lost. But the verbal mumbo-jumbo to say that took so much time that by the time Jeffries was done, you'd almost forgotten the question. Democrats would be better served to try and answer the question like a normal person, because normalcy and straight talk, that's what people are seeking these days in their political leaders. Say something like, obviously, we Democrats failed. Voters did not like what we were saying or pledging, so yes, we need to reevaluate. Jeffries and others need to get back to talking like a regular person, not talking like an establishment politician. And that effort would be easier, in my view, if Democrats stood for something bigger than being against Donald Trump or being against Republicans, as big as that is. If you look at several issues that progressives have championed, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage, making college more affordable, closing the wealth gap, polls show a clear majority of Americans support the progressive position. On Medicare for all, for example, even a majority of Republicans support such an expansion of health care. But Republican and Democratic political leaders alike are beholden to healthcare corporations and pharmaceutical companies, so the Democratic position comes out as making minor healthcare and insurance changes at the margins, not doing something big. And Democrats, therefore, with that small-minded approach instead of something big, lose the chance to inspire voters over healthcare and create a movement that would bring energy and enthusiasm to an election. And by the way, Medicare for all is clearly an anti-establishment position. Talk about upsetting the apple cart. And the goal, of course, is to lower healthcare costs, expand coverage, and make life easier for all Americans.
In a civil society, we are all less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero. The real hero in this story is the person who called 911 at McDonald's this morning.
That was Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro lecturing seemingly the entirety of the American populace for its reaction to the assassination of United Health CEO Brian Thompson. He says that it's not okay that people in quote-unquote dark corners seem to be celebrating Thompson's death. And yes, some people are celebrating what happened. A small handful, like Governor Shapiro, are appalled at the barbarism of the attack. However, I would say that most others are apathetic to it. People simply can't be bothered to care about the death of one person who they believe is responsible for the deaths of so many other Americans, none of which, by the way, made national headlines for days on end or resulted in any kind of investigation or manhunt or arrest. Who cares that this guy died because of predatory behavior? Because someone he's never seen or heard of before decided his life should end. United Health, along with other major private insurers in this country, make those types of predatory decisions all day long as a matter of protocol, all in the name of big business. But Josh Shapiro isn't the only one who is woefully out of touch when it comes to the sentiments of the American people. The fact of the matter is that none of these people in lofty positions resonate with the American people anymore. They live in a different world from the rest of us just by nature of their positions. So here's Andrew Whitty, the CEO of United, the parent company of United Health, addressing his company in a leaked video.
The mission of this company is truly to make sure that we help the system improve by helping the experience for individuals get better and better. There was nobody who did more to try and advance that mission than Brian Thompson. And there are very few people in the history of the US healthcare industry who had a bigger positive effect on American healthcare than Brian.
I would love to see his data on how he thinks his company has made the experience of individuals get better and better, unless the individuals he's referring to are not the sick and disabled American people who are paying into his insurance program. There's more.
Our role is a critical role, and we make sure that care is safe, appropriate, and it's delivered when people need it. And we guard against the pressures that exist for unsafe care or for unnecessary care to be delivered in a way which makes the whole system too complex and ultimately unsustainable.
The problem is, insurance companies aren't supposed to be making decisions as to what care is unsafe or unnecessary. Why are insurance companies allowed to override doctors' recommendations for the patients they've actually seen and treated? And there's more, and this is the part that has this CEO, Andrew Whitty, getting death threats of his own.
I encourage you to tune out that critical noise that we're hearing right now. It does not reflect reality. It is simply a sign of an era in which we live. What we must do is focus on what we know to be true. And what we know to be true is that the health system needs a company like United Health Group, and it needs people like Brian within it.
Talk about living in a bubble, talk about willful ignorance, talk about privilege. No lessons were learned, no introspection was done, and no humility was found. And I would have said that those things should not have been expected in the first place. It's very difficult when you're sitting in a high-rise office building in some giant city, maybe in another country, judging from this guy's accent, to understand the plight of the common person. And for them, the common person is everyone who is not them. They sit insulated and isolated in their offices. You can't blame them for feeling that they themselves are separate from and above millions of people. They literally look down on people, faceless, nameless people who register more in their minds as numbers on a spreadsheet, as data points. They bury their heads in the sand when there is a barrage of horror stories about the damage United Health and companies like it have knowingly inflicted on millions of families because, for one, it's what they've been doing all this time, and two, it's not really their concern. Their concern is the business, the money, the numbers. But even those numbers aren't working out well for United Health in the aftermath of Thompson's death. If all these healthcare companies care about is their shareholder value, maybe this will get their attention. For context, the S&P 500 index rose by nearly 1% this week, its third week doing so. However, United Health Group's stock fell 5% last Friday, which contributed to a 10% loss for that week. That translates to approximately $56 billion from the market cap. After that video of Andrew Whitty, the United CEO, was leaked, after-hours trading dropped 5% on Sunday. Similar trends have been seen with other insurance companies. Elevance Health, the parent company of Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, fell 6% by the end of the week. Humana and Centene also fell by 5%, and Cigna fell by 6%. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield notably announced a controversial policy change the day that Thompson was killed. They quickly reversed that decision in the wake of his death, possibly because of the assassination, possibly because of the backlash, including backlash from the governor of New York, or possibly because they saw the writing on the stock market wall. If Witty's leaked tape is of any indicator, it's that these companies and their executives will continue to unapologetically put their heads down and work regardless of the negative impacts their companies have on the world and its people. They simply don't care about any of that, or they're deluding themselves into thinking that their companies are doing much better for their American people than they actually are. Their jobs aren't to care about any of us, though. Their jobs are to make money for themselves and for their shareholders, and that's it. However, where there's a leak, there is a disgruntled insider, and it is telling that much of the criticism over healthcare practices and companies in this country hasn't just come from victimized patients. A lot of it has come from doctors who have had to fight insurance companies to get their patients the care that they need, because according to Witty, it's the insurance company's job to decide what is necessary for a patient and what isn't. Friendly reminder that health insurers are not typically doctors, but also how normal is it for doctors to recommend paths of care for patients that they haven't seen themselves? That's not even normal. Maybe the billions of dollars in lost market cap will finally speak to these health insurance executives, but there is a reason why these health insurance companies don't mind spending millions of dollars every election cycle on lobbying efforts.